Do it.
And we're live.
Hey, what's up?
Yeah, well, things are looking up pretty great on my end. I don't know. I've been, we've been talking about this, like, where's God's wife in the first one, and like behind the scenes, we've been digging deeper into it, and then we came across this from the Young to Live By channel regarding the terminal lucidity of, the masculine and the feminine. And there's been a lot of insights that came from that, but also from a lot of other stuff that we've been looking at. And I think, we're slowly getting somewhere regarding this thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we just started shooting from the hip, and now, well, I did anyway.
Yeah.
And now it's focusing in a lot more about hey, yeah, there's other people talking about this. There's some other research being done on this. There's an actual couple out there that is versed in Jungian psychology that is talking about this. So yeah, I'm very interested in continuing this conversation now that we have more ammunition for the topic.
Oh yeah, definitely. And yeah, I think maybe for like those that are listening right now, maybe to start off, where we kind of left off in the last one, to like recap. Well, as people are aware, there's this whole like, I guess this whole gender thing going on, but at the same time, there seems to be in the culture this rift between the intellectual, the instinctual side of humans in general, but also when it comes to that, this like how you were talking about, Neirum, this split between heaven and earth, between the feminine and the masculine, but also the shadow and the light, and a real need to end this war, between heaven and earth.
Yeah, yeah. I posted some. I told people we were doing this part 2, and I said if anybody has any questions you'd like me to pose or things like that, let me know. And some people sent some interesting stuff back. Somebody said the way men inappropriately exercise power through violence, and the way that women inappropriately exercise power through sexuality. So they were commenting on an inversion. There used to be an expression of violence throughout human history, and now there's an expression of sexuality, and that expression of sexuality is very much based in the feminine. And this expression of violence, such as high school fights, high school fist fights, is practically non-existent. So that masculine sort of power is all but gone. The primary mode of power being exercised is the sexuality of women. Through their clothing, the dancing on TikTok, the OnlyFans, things of this nature, is dominating our culture. But I just wanted to bring that up. I thought that was a very interesting point on the whole dynamic that we've been discussing here.
I think so, and I think that looking at that, some of the insights from the Young to Live By channel are pretty relevant here, especially they talked about wisdom, power, and beauty that we're talking about with regarding to the feminine, and how generally when within a man, the intellect and instinct are split, that it becomes more difficult to see these three parts at the same time, where one focuses on a particular aspect of the feminine, where you can't see the entire thing, where a particular like unconscious drives that the woman might not even be aware of, or she might be, depends on the situation. It's very general that we're talking about here, but what's clear is that then, you know, one does not see these things. So, you know, then there can be these instinctual, unintegrated drives there that can express itself through like a power drive, like, you know, like the Adlerian power drive, or through sexuality as well. Because instinct is very much tied to both. And, you know, and when it is in the shadow from a Jungian lens, so when it's not integrated or repressed in some way, it can come out in distorted ways. And I think that's very much key to what's happening with both the masculine, but also with the feminine. Because, you know, if we take the masculine, you know, there's this whole like toxic masculinity trope that's also going around, like, you know, those particularly, you know, those masculine cult guru types and the weird stuff that happens in that scene.
Like Andrew Tate, yeah.
And I think, I think very much like this unintegrated instinctual side plays a part in it, because I do know that if it is more integrated, it taps us into deeper layers of the psyche, so the deeper layers of ourselves, which you know, leads to us to be more authentic, to stand more in our own power in that way, but also you know, be able to you know, like instinct is like a sonar, like a radar that we have, and if we are connected to it, we can see through bullshit.
Yes. I was having a discussion with my friend a few nights ago. He was going to try to make it to the talk, but he couldn't make it. I think he had to work.
Okay.
But anyway, he was talking about Andrew Tate, and he was telling me how he made his money. I thought he just like had like an OnlyFans house or something, but it was much deeper than that. So he went to another country, and he bought like these houses and put these women in it where they would, you know, get on camera and, you know, do sexualized things on camera with men. But I found out it went much deeper than that. These women were not on OnlyFans. They were not like on a thing like that. They were fishing. They were like catfishing men, and they had a team of Andrew Tate's dudes coaching the women on what to say to the man to manipulate him. And they would get that man to give their credit card, give all this stuff, because the woman would act like she's going out with the guy and wants to marry him. And she would get all of his money and give it to Andrew Tate and scam these men. I didn't know that was the specifics of it. So these toxic masculinity figures, these so-called alpha males, that is their approach to power, is like gamma male shit, you know, like sneaky, manipulative, conniving sort of thing. So that just is really fucking stupid. That's a stupid thing to do. You have to like fly around the entire planet and avoid the country you were born in, America, because of all this illegal shit that you're doing. And then you think you're a super awesome man for like lying and fucking over, you know, these lonely older men. It was lonely old men that were like widowed that he was scamming. This is a guy Buddy looks up to? What the fuck is going on with that? I think that's a deep-seated resentment of humanity itself. There's nothing to look to in that regard at all. But I just wanted to touch on that. I didn't know it could do that.
I don't know. It sounds to me, because I've been looking into, with, you know, the king archetype talk that we did. You know, there's also in the first part I went a little bit into the shadow king, and it sounds very much like that, like the unintegrated, like shadow king aspect, where it's the dark side of the Jungian self. So it's the unintegrated expression of the king archetype, where it becomes manipulative, self-centered, and you know, like ego inflation is possibly part of it too, and like there's a lot of dynamics part of that, and but you know, it also very much highlights when the Shadow King is active in an individual. At the same time, you know that their instinctual side is probably not integrated. There's not like a proper balance. because the Shadow King is also, you know, about manipulating, controlling, and these kind of aspects as well. So there's very much this highlights that it's not integrated, and there's probably, you know, like complexes and a lot of other things at play in such individuals. So in that sense, it's just sad, and it makes me think. It makes me think, like, you know, how Jung to Live By talked about the catabolic process that's kind of going on, and like how it's kind of like going along with like the with this process of deletion.
Yeah, if Andrew Tate would have just done like an OnlyFans thing, I don't know if it would have been as awful, because, you know, it's like women agreeing to want to do that, and, you know, he was like, you know, housing them or whatever. Hey, that's adults trying to figure it out. And I thought he did it in America too. I thought it was like a tough, legitimate thing, but, you know, my friend was telling me about it, and we were diving deep into it, and it was just a straight up scam of lonely old men. That really bothered me. I was like, well, you know, man, we're honestly offering a service where women were offering comfort to lonely men, and the men knew, like, oh, this is just a woman I'm paying for a service, and then when I turn the computer off, it's over. But no, these men thought these women loved them. I guess Andrew Tate's take on it is like, oh, these men are stupid, they're weak, I deserve their money because they're idiots. I'm like, that is such a disgusting energy. I really despise that.
Just... No,
but anyway, on about. But I thought it was worth touching on for a moment, because it came up in conversation with this. In Where's God's Wife? Well, you know, I don't know what's going on with the men too. What's going on with the women? Why are people feeling like it's necessary or justified to screw over people and straight up lie, just a bold-faced lie to people?
Yeah,
but
yeah, for sure.
But anyway.
Yeah, for sure, and right. It makes me think of like the whole like, you know, Adler conceals Freud, you know, and then like it goes into ego inflation, or like, you know, towards Jung, and then Jung falls victim to both kind of dynamic. It's like that, you know, Jung to Live By talks about, you know, with Freud being the unintegrated instinctual side, where it comes out in weird distorted ways, distorts one's power drive, you know, leading to the Shadow King and this like weird manipulative stuff that can even like be happening like unconsciously, like they're not consciously aware of it, and it goes into like the persona, so the social mask more, that they perceive themselves as to be this good person. Well, they're not aware that they're actually just being, you know, manipulative people instead, that it's the Shadow King that's acting through them. Yes,
it is. We also said to a whole other conversation about, you know, if women want to continue doing the OnlyFans, because, you know, there's a big thing going on where people aren't watching it anymore. I've seen that on YouTube. I think Sydney Watson was covering it, how OnlyFans is like going bankrupt, and a lot of the women aren't getting the revenue that they used to, and people are bailing out.
That's good.
You know, yeah, it is good. But me and my friend were talking, like, if this service was to continue in any kind of constructive way, and we're just spitballing, you know, because I'm not interested in that, but I know there's a lot of lonely men that are unable, for whatever reason, to get the company of a woman. And, you know, it's been a thing that humans have done for thousands of years, because it's a problem. You know, there's a lot of men out there that never get anybody. And that's not as big of a problem for women statistically. I know there's still exceptions, but long story short, what if there was a type of service instead of just strictly sexual? It was sort of like a coaching. Like you could hire women to coach the men how to appropriately pursue women, or how to pursue a romantic relationship with a woman in real life. sort of having like a female coach in a sexual way, but also with all this added sort of integrated knowledge of like, hey, why don't you practice this on me and see what this is like and say this thing to me, and maybe a woman would be more interested in you, or help a man change his look, or motivate him in a way. We were just thinking, that would be a constructive form of prostitution instead of a destructive form of prostitution. Because if we're going to have this around forever, for all of humanity, for all of human history in the past and the future, what could be done to somewhat improve it? But it was just a tangent. It was just a spitball idea. But I thought I would bring that up with you as well and see what you think about that.
I don't know. I mean, it all depends on how something is used. Something is not inherently bad. It's just about like how it's what the intent behind something is, and if it's done with I guess like a good ethical approach. And the thing is that I don't know. It makes me think about like the some of the old like pagan traditions with where there were like similar roles that were there that some women would do, but they would be doing those roles on their own.
Yeah,
they would.
Because there's plenty of men that aren't interested in getting married and having kids. There's plenty, just like there are men. Or there are men that want to, but they can't. So yeah, it's just, I think this way of thinking about everybody must be homogenized, everybody must be this and that, I don't know if that's possible for every single human being on earth. I think a majority of us desire what we've been speaking about: marriage, children, stability, love, and hope for the future. But for whatever set of reasons, there's always going to be outliers. And for whatever reason, those outliers have become the majority now. That type of lifestyle has become the majority instead of marriage and kids. But anyway, I guess that's enough with that tangent. I just wanted to bring that up and see what you thought about that.
I think, like bringing the whole like Freud, Adler, Jung thing back into it, with unintegrated instinct. And this going into the like an unconscious power drive that can influence one's behavior in like negative ways, even if it is like in a subtle way. But if instinct isn't integrated and there's like an imbalance between instinct and intellect, there's also often it's from a Jungian lens. You have the anima and the animus, and the emotional aspect. And the inner guide aspect can then become more, one first has to integrate the instinctual and the shadow side before one can work on the anima or the animus. And, through the anima and the animus, one can relate to people in a better way, a more integrated way. And if that's not there, and an instinct is, for instance, not integrated, well, then that ability becomes lessened. So, there can be a breakdown of relating to others and, also to yourself in a deeper way. And I think that very much plays into, this lack of relating between, men between each other, but also men and women between each other as well. Because there's this more of this disconnect then. But, this disconnect is not something that people choose to do. It's, often through trauma or other life circumstances that these kind of things happen. But, complexes also play a big part in that, like, on both like a personal but also a collective level, like how, the culture approaches certain things, such as emotions, for instance. But, but there's generally, from what I know from the Proto-Indo-European lens, also what I want to bring up regarding complexes still, that the parental complexes, how we relate in childhood to our parents also have a massive impact. And we used to address these complexes through like these choreos or orchteia rituals where we would be tapping into what Jung Levi calls meta instinct. So these deeper archetypal, undistorted ways of being, and we don't do those things anymore. And I think it's a big part of why these problems are so prolonged, because we used to. I mean, even in the Middle Ages, at some point, we used to do these things, through apprenticeship. Like a young man would go out into the world and would become an apprentice, or would become a squire and become a knight, and do all of these different things. And it's that kind of part. It's that there was still kind of like an essence of that there, but in the deeper layer, it's this like death and rebirth, and this true liberation that comes from it, to break free from one's parental influences.
The key to what you're talking about, being an apprentice or joining a guild, people did that when they were like 12 or 13. Like, they figured out, hey, what am I going to do for the rest of my life? What skill am I going to get? Mm-hmm. And then by the time they were 16, they were skilled enough to like have enough money to maybe think about getting their own home or their own piece of land, and then getting married. Now people don't do that until they're in their late 30s. And I think there's a problem with that. There's an arrested development of all of humanity, really. But mainly since, I'm a man, I notice it with men. Like, we're ready to take on responsibility and do things and have our own house when we're 16 years old. And we're not allowed to even drive. We're not allowed to do anything until we get into our 20s and stuff. We're like, oh, maybe you're a little bit of an adult. You're still a kid, though. There's this condescension from the older people of like, no, you're an idiot. You don't know anything. Wait until you're in your 30s. Dude, you're getting way up there in years. Most of humanity, people didn't make it to that age. In your 30s is like old age compared to the rest of time. And I think that's worth noting in our genetic code, and even these archetypes that express themselves through our genes. What is the problem? Well, maybe we're taking too long and we get confused and stuck in the mud. You go through high school, through college, you become an intern. That's the modern form of apprenticeship. And then you work your way up by serving coffee to your higher ups and licking their boots, and then maybe they'll give you a higher position if you grovel enough. That is not what we used to do. That is not what apprenticeship is. Apprenticeship is getting your hands dirty, getting in there, learning a skill, something useful, and making a living to where you can support yourself and then support a woman and then support your children. That was what we've been doing for so long. Now we've changed it up so much, I think it is profoundly confusing to both men and women. We take so long, we miss so many exits, so many opportunities throughout our teen years and our early 20s. And by the time you're in your 30s, your brain is half dead, man. Like, you're not, your mind is not as elastic as it was in the teen years to adapt and figure out and conquer new things. I think that is a big, big, big problem. Treating adults like they're children. This arrested development way late into your 30s. And I see that in the form of a lot of men, their heroes are comic book characters. That's what does that mean? What's going on with that? Who are our real heroes? Who are our real role models? What is it that we're really doing in high school? Is high school even a necessity? Those 4 years are critical to the development of a human being, and you're stuck in there learning like regurgitated 5th grade history concepts and mathematics. Like you can learn most algebra, history, and everything before you even hit the 7th grade. And then you get into high school, it's just regurgitated. It's just a review. Okay, 4 years of review where I could go out and be making a lot of money. I could own my own house. I could be, creating a family. I could be doing a lot more with myself than what you guys are wanting me to do, like society. And I wonder why that is. What are your thoughts on that arrested development?
I don't know. I think it has to do with, in some sense, bringing up the Chorus Octare rituals again, and the parental complexes to some degree. But I want to bring that up again because both of these rituals are also very much tied to the empowerment of the individual. And I think looking at what you were bringing up, I think it very much ties into that, where there's a lack of empowerment of both the masculine and the feminine to break free and become their own individual, where it's not, it's more about that they can, I don't know, I guess more about what they can bring into the world instead of, like how we seem to be approaching things now. It's there's this, it's like we're not tapping into the potential of people, and what they're truly capable of, their true potential, and that's true for both men and women. And
yes,
and putting both men and women in these kind of jobs where that's not possible is, I think, kind of plays into this whole sense of arrested development, quote unquote, what you're talking about. Because I think also very much that the whole impeding that you're talking about very much ties into just the societal pressure hindering the full expression of the individual, like who they are and what they're capable of, truly capable of. And I think that's when we unlock that's when we become adults, when we tap into that capability within ourselves that we have, or to transform and go beyond these imposed limitations that come from outside, that are just imposed upon us by society. I mean, yes, of course, there's a need to balance, the individual and society, but I think it's very much, to I don't know, I feel like there needs to be this shift to understand that actually, if the individual is allowed to reach their full potential, if they're encouraged to become who they truly are, and that's very individual. We can't, no one can say how that exactly is, but if we allow for this flourishing to happen, I think that the individual will bring so much more to society than trying to push them and into these kind of jobs, because they would actually be bringing and fulfilling a particular need to society out of something that's truly aligned to who they are. So it will be way more impactful and powerful and transformative for society as a whole, leading to something that's not so dead. Because that's something that I've noticed, man. Society in that sense becomes so rigid and stale if people are not,
I think it's because the young people are asleep. The young people are dead inside. They imagine you have just grown into being an adult. Like you were a kid and you went through all the changes, and you have your growth spurt, and you're a big man and you've grown a beard now, and you have to raise your hand to go to the bathroom and get approval by a government employee. I think that is demoralizing to the human spirit. That is destroying our minds. And you do that until you're 18 years old. Mm-hmm. So it's like beaten into your head to submit to the government on the very base level. Like if we're talking about chakras, your base chakra is locked from the government employees. You cannot release your bowels unless a government employee approves it. You raise your hand, they stamp a hall pass, and they give you permission. What is that psychologically doing to humanity? What is that doing to these teenage people that are becoming adults? They think they're not adults. They think they're still children. It infantilizes them, makes them feel like infants, and it arrests that development way into their 20s. Because I noticed, because I couldn't stand high school. I quit when I was 16, and I went out and I got my GED, and I went to college, and I graduated college when I was 18 with an associate's degree, and then I went to university. Nobody told me I could do that. I had to figure that out. But if more people knew that, what would the world be like? You know, with that head start. Because when I went to college, when I was 16, after I got my GED, because if you get your GED, you can go to college. You know, it doesn't matter. It's high school diploma equivalent. So when I was 16, I was able to go to college and work on a 2-year degree, and it was so amazing, dude, that I did not have to raise my hand to go to the bathroom. I remember that because I was like, hey, is it cool if I go to the bathroom? And the professor was like, please don't ever ask me that again. You're an adult. You can make that decision for yourself. If you lost some notes during the lecture, please ask a classmate to provide them so you can copy them. I was like, oh my God, I'm getting treated like a man. I'm being treated like an adult. I can remember how happy I was. Like, I can't even express it because I experienced that earlier than most people in society do. And it was I felt like I was a bird flying in the sky, man. It was the most amazing feeling that I was treated how I felt I should be treated through my hard work, and it was recognized. And I think that's so important to talk about, even with this God's wife thing. Maybe all this stuff. So. Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. I think the whole foundation regarding this that comes way later starts in both childhood, but also when we're teens and in our early years. It's in that way. When it comes to intellect and instinct, also this symbolically, also this imposition of control on the individual. In that level, where you were saying that you had to, then one would have to ask permission for everything, and one would have to do all of these kind of things, and it's this this kind of approach that it disconnects one from one's authentic self, because one has to repress who one is. And one's own needs, one's own desires, and one's own, to sit still and conform to this kind of thing. But it just does not work, and that's why that's why the old ancient traditions were doing these liberation rituals for a reason, because you cannot you don't have adults you don't create adults, or like help people to become adults is something that is maybe a better way to put it.
Yeah.
By trying to micromanage or control them and to do these kind of things, you don't empower individuals with that. You just only take away people's agency, and and then it leads to complexes. It leads to all kinds of distortions that are imposed upon people, where there's this disconnect between intellect and instinct, and then trauma can play into it as well. But it seems to be like this cultural problem where this kind of dynamic seems to be reinforced, where this kind of the emotional, the instinctual seems to be pretty much like no, only rational, completely controlled, like full self-control kind of way, where it just does not work. It's the Orphics would be talking like they would be talking about the kingdom of Kronos. It's like a shadow state. It's pretty bad, and the thing is that that does not lead to healthy adults. They would on purpose do these choreos and archeia like rituals in different cultures. So they would be broken completely free from all social constraints for a reason, so they could re-enter it on their own free will, on their own. They could determine their own values. They could determine who they are. Free from all this nonsense, so that then they could very much come into society again as an adult and actually know, like, oh, this is who I am, this is what I'm going to do, and actually start on also, like, figure that out, and actually, like, integrate both intellect and instinct into oneself, so that one can approach the world in a more integrated manner. So we, it would also then lead in these cultures, these ancient cultures, towards this sense of hieros gamos, this like, it's very much like, it was a very elaborate ritual that they did, where it was very much about starting to, like, be about this more equal relationship between
Right. This conversation reminds me, I've been watching Star Trek: The Next Generation,
Mm-hmm.
and there's this character in there. He's a teenager. His name's Wesley Crusher. He's the son of the doctor of the ship, Beverly, the redheaded lady, and he is dealing with exactly what we're talking about here. This forced arrested development from the captain, from the first, from his own mother, and he has to, time and time again, prove himself that, no, I'm now a man, I'm an adult, I'm figuring this out, I know how to fix the warp engines better than Geordie LaForge, and I know how to modify the tractor beam to save the ship from this alien monster. And so he has to prove himself, and over time, they start to respect him, and then they give him a field commission. They give him the rank of ensign, and they let him work on the bridge. But even when he's working there, there's an episode where Data finds his long lost brother, and he assembles him, and it turns out, oh, this guy's evil. It's his evil twin brother. It's like a Cain and Abel situation. And the first person to notice was Wesley Crusher, the teenager. He's like, guys, I don't think that's Data. I think that's his evil brother, Lore. And the captain's like, shut up, Wesley, shut up. And his mom's like, yeah, shut up, do your job, turn around and fly the ship, shut up. And I was like, whoa, what the hell? Dude, this guy is like worried about the ship, he's worried about you, and he's worried about his friend Data, like might be knocked out somewhere in a closet, and everybody's telling him to shut up. So what does he do? He says, fuck you guys, I'm gonna go investigate this myself. And they're like, yeah, get off the bridge, get out of here. I was like, whoa, what is this hostility? And so, of course, the teenager on the ship, he figures out Data's knocked out in the closet, and he reactivates him. He's like, Data, everybody thinks I'm a stupid little boy, but I know the truth. Let's go get your brother. And Data's like, thank you, Wesley. He's the only guy on the ship that respects him. And they bond and create this deep friendship. And then there's this fight in the cargo bay. And then everybody comes in there and sees Wesley in there alone dealing with this. And they're like, oh, dude. All right. They don't even apologize. They just like, okay, Wesley. I'm like, man, what does this kid got to do to like earn some respect and quit being seen as a kid? I thought that was crazy, because half the time he's more intelligent and effective because he has that elastic mind. He's a teenager. He's able to adapt, think quickly, learn quickly. So I just saw that episode last night. I thought it was worth mentioning.
I think so, and I think it very much. I think it very much ties into what we've been now talking about, and I think it plays into I think it very much plays into also these ancient rituals again. Yeah, where the
rite of passage.
The rite of passage, yeah, because when they would come back, and this would be for both men and women, it was recognized that once they went through it, they were now an adult. No fucking question about it. And they would have to be treated with the proper respect that was them due. And I think very much this is missing. And I think it's missing. I think it's leading. It's that, but also connected to like how how there's too much of a focus on the rational and this like pushing down of the instinctual and the emotional that leads to this weird like disconnect, because it's like it's weirdly expected of both men and women to be these like rational robots, and and that's not human, because we have intellect, we have instinct, we have emotions, we have all these different parts of ourselves. And I think that very much plays into why there's such a problem of relating, because just think about it. Like if there's like and it's not the case for everyone, but for those that it does apply to, it's like, think about like a society that like focuses on like, no, this is rationality only, man, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And it's like, and you're not in touch with your instinctual side or your emotions. Take I don't know, like for an example, a man. It's like, no wonder they have a fucking hard problem relating to women or other people, because you're not in touch. If you're not in touch with those aspects of yourself, it's harder to be able to relate in any other way than just intellectually. And I think and a real relationship and a real like being able to build a family, but also like build deeper bonds, requires one to be able to also be aware of one's own emotions, one's own instinctual side, next to one's intellectual side, to be aware of all three of those, so that actually like this sense of love is actually possible, and this deeper relationship between both men and women, but also men between each other and women between each other. And I think that very much ties into that. And I think when it comes to that, it's kind of why I feel like these kind of like ancient rituals, where it's basically like those like societal constraints, fuck them all, and just figure out who one is on one's own. And I think it seems to be, I don't know, for me at least, it seems to be like my own personal answer, at least, to this problem. But
I'd like to recognize the new person in the room and get a female perspective here. If you want to jump in at any time, what do you think about what we're talking about here? Where do you think God's wife is, and why do you think there's like an absence of that in a lot of the mainstream religions, like the Abrahamic religions that we're encountering today?
Yes, hello, GnosticNun.
Hi, sorry I couldn't make it from the beginning. Can't stay too long. I'm gonna do some breathing.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that this whole concept of like intentionally bringing balance, like recognizing really the essence of these polarities and like consciously trying to bring balance is a very new thing. Like we can't really know like maybe exactly what the mentality was back in like the ancient matriarchal cultures. But I think, this idea that men have always just been dominating and, that's just the nature of things is not entirely correct. Like that may have been a strong kind of thread for the past couple thousand years. But I think biology kind of shows that like we've evolved to take the needs of women into consideration. And so, I can't say for sure why cultures have pushed out the feminine like that. Mary is a big part of religion still, but as far as, I don't know, maybe it goes back to, I think originally, really she was supposed to have been the leader of the church. And she kind of got pushed out of that.
Yeah. Yeah, I've touched on that Mary, but she's no Freya or Hera. She's not like a goddess. She's a human, and that's interesting to me that the female position of office in the heavens was reduced to that of a human being that mated or was interfaced with a godlike being to create a divine being, like Jesus. Um, it feels like a downgrade, and I know I just pissed off half the planet saying that, but that's just what it feels like to me. She's certainly not a goddess. She doesn't have powers, like Freya would.
She's sort of elevated, like what's the Greek? I think it was Greek goddess who's like the mother of Ariadne, I think, or Dionysus' mother or something. Kind of like raised to the status of a goddess as immortal. I mean, in a way, you can look at like the aspect of Venus. She is, a goddess in that sense, but also she's very much of the earth. She's the world of matter. And, I don't have a problem with that. Not particularly attached to. I think maybe the problem is just looking outside of that to begin with, like looking outside of, we're still being focused on these kind of, I don't want to say imaginary, but, like the gods outside of ourselves rather than just focusing on the senses and where that leads you.
The instinct, yes. Yeah, there's a sorely missed connection to human instinct nowadays. It's very much digitized. Most of human experience. Very rarely do you see people out in nature enjoying themselves, or if they are, it's for brief moments, and then they want to go back into the air conditioning.
Yeah, I don't know what else I have to say on that, but I just think it's very new. Like whatever we're looking for, we're forging ahead. This kind of conscious creation of looking at ourselves and our biology, and I think this is just a very big theme right now in this age.
I think so. I think so too. Yeah.
Well, while you're on here, I'd like to ask you a few things, because we definitely need a female perspective on this stuff. So last time we did this podcast on part 1, I was talking a little bit about the Trinity and how, it's all dudes, and then you look further back in the past and it used to be a man, woman, and child, father, mother, child. It wasn't like a son or a daughter. It was the child. And then over time, you get rid of the woman, the mother. You turn her into the Holy Spirit. You get rid of the child. It's a son now. Now it's 3 dudes.
Right.
And I was thinking, I was looking into the Native American religion. It's called the Dena. And they believe that the earth is the mother and the father is the sky. And then I was just extrapolating that to Abrahamic religions. Okay, who lives in the earth? Not a woman. It's Satan with these horns and all this stuff associated with sin. And then who lives in the sky? The Father. It's another dude. He's up in the sky. He's the good guy. The guy on the earth that you live on, that's the bad guy. So I just thought, what if that Satan character is actually a woman, or was a woman, and they demonized it, and then that turned into demonizing women and this whole strange power struggle between the genders in the Abrahamic religions. Me and my friend were talking about this, and he said something profound. He said, so we're in the midst of a cosmic custody battle between the heavens and the earth. And I thought that was really interesting to think about, the devil is actually a woman and God is the man, and they had a divorce and they had a war in heaven about something, and now the humans on the earth have to choose between the earth or the heaven. Yeah, our parents have broken up.
It's the children who suffer.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's pretty clear that that is exactly what has happened. Yeah, and it's like those earliest models. It's like, yeah, look around. That's what you see. A man, a woman equals a child, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And then when you start, it seems like what people tend to do, everything started getting pushed into the shadow. Like these other parts of the Trinity are, whatever I can't accept for whatever reason about myself. These constellation of associations get made, and now that's all pushed into the shadow, and it's, an object of derision. And the same thing can happen the other way around,
True.
I thought it would, but, I think we're just resolving that right now, like along the same lines that people have to do this.
Yeah.
In their own lives.
Yeah. I think the I guess I'll just say the corruption of the original Trinity into being all dudes, and then having a God that needs no wife, needs no one else, yet somehow he can create all of reality with no womb, with no woman, with no interaction with anybody else, a singular being. I do think that is the source of this transgendered idea. I think it directly comes from that whole concept, even though in those Abrahamic religions they're very, very against that, very against homosexuality and any kind of deviation from that. But as we've moved forward into the intellectual age and the digital age, I think people naturally come to these conclusions because we can't escape our biology. We can't escape these things. But now people have this desire to escape it, to be more like God, a transgendered being that is called father, but yet he's not a guy. He's not a dude. He has no wife. He's alone up there. Yet he can create everything, just like, that's the power of a woman. She can create. A man can protect and build. Yet all of these roles are put into one singular being that is outside of space and time, this omnipotent being. And if you listen to LGBTQ people, that is their goal, to become like the Abrahamic God, to have unlimited power, to choose your gender, to flip your biology around and become whatever you desire without a family, without a man and a woman dynamic. What do you think about that?
Yeah, it's hard to say for me. I mean, because I can't live inside their experience to know what kind of needs. I mean, I can the only way I can relate to that is like, okay, well, I don't want somebody telling me how I'm supposed to look, how I'm supposed to act, if that's not how I feel, but then the other part of it for me is that I see it in some ways, and this might be a very unpopular opinion. I respect that, like if you genuinely feel like this doesn't feel right for you, but I also want to, I feel like sometimes, especially young people, feel like, oh, there's something wrong with me. I feel, fragmented, this or that, my identity. And then they see something and might think, oh, well, that's the thing, like, and
yeah,
so maybe part of it reaching towards wholeness, in some way.
I think so from like a Jungian lens too, that it's reaching towards wholeness, like, masculine and feminine coming together. But I do think though that I don't know, I think personally that a lot of dynamics in the culture itself that has led to this weird repression of both the instinctual but also the feminine kind of plays into this. Because if those things in the culture are repressed, it can, like it leads to the repression of these things into the shadow, and with that, it creates a fragmentation, a fragmentation of the self, and that can like play into it. But it's very difficult to exactly say per person, or to like really generalize it, because it all depends. Because there, like nothing, because there's always exceptions to the rule, and there's always and it plays out in a unique way, exactly like how if all these different parts of oneself come together, how it's expressed like archetypically, or like how what is like the true expression of a person's self. So we can't exactly say that, so I want to point that out. But at the same time, I do feel that I do understand, why people in the current climate would be confused. It would be very confusing, because, the culture is pushing all this stuff that leads to this sense of fragmentation of a person's self, and like who they are in an authentic way. And it becomes very disorienting. It leads to disorientation of that. And it's natural for people to seek answers and to find out like who they are. And I think in that way, to be honest, it's actually, I would say it's better for people to question what the society is pushing, and to try to find out, even if everyone like stumbles and falls and makes mistakes, and figuring things out, and at the same time, then we get to the certain point where we get and we're more sure about things, and we actually figure out actually this is me. And I think that whole process of figuring that out and getting to that point where we figure out what is this unfragmented self, our authentic self, and finding out what that is, I think that's right there important. And I think in that way that the whole I guess society gets really weirded out by it, because it has certain ideas regarding that. It pushes this rational only kind of weird lens onto things. This very I guess masculinizing force, where it should just be more about being a human. And I kind of feel like that all plays into everything what's going on, and then on an individual level, it becomes so intricate and so personalized that it's difficult to say anything about that. It's also more becomes in the sense of generalization, in the sense that we're talking about these aspects. But I don't know. I do feel that this movement, though, what is happening with people questioning these things, questioning what is going on, is a good first step. It's it's the first step that you have to do to do one's shadow work, to question the dominant narrative, and to actually question these things, to be able to do individuation. But I do also feel that there's a general cultural lack, for obvious reasons, for people to be able to figure this thing out on their own. It's because people have to figure this thing out themselves.
And also,
sorry, go ahead.
I mean to interrupt you, but you can sort of understand where that sort of assigning the shadow, where sort of it comes from, because if you do associate the female with instincts, well, a lot of scary things do live in the instincts, if you become overcome by your lusts and I guess that's the main thing with that, women have been associated with, that is detrimental. That's like being stuck in the low, I guess, base chakra, if you want to think about it like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this is something I don't know very much about, but my understanding of Thelema, for instance, is the princess is lowest on the tree of life, of that ascension. And she's raised up to the top to a queen level by the love relationship with the prince who becomes a king. And so, I mean, I think there are just some parallels there. Like, you know, it's, you know, it's not like everybody's out there walking around being misogynistic and, you know, having all these. There are a lot of people out there who are living in this kind of mode, whether they realize it or not. Like, everyone has had to, and, you know, the princess isn't a physical female. These are aspects within every one of us that we do for ourselves, raising up out of, you know, lower instincts that are uncultivated.
Yeah, I think that is the primary disconnect that really got me going about the Trinity. I was just looking at, you know, the Abrahamic religions, and I was like, okay, so you have rolled men, women, and children into a singular being, and I don't feel like those people realized that is our role model. That we look up to these, in the past, gods and goddesses to guide us on what to do, how to act, how to embody ourselves. And you remove that for 2,000 years, and you have, and I know it's not considered a transgendered being, it's called, you know, the Father God, but it acts like a transgendered being with the ability to create without a woman. And then you look at what we're doing today with babies being grown in robotic pods. That's the same power that the Abrahamic God has to create life without a woman, to figure it out himself and science it out. And and these people creating the baby pods, you know, they're atheists. They don't believe in God. They hate God, or they don't believe it. But I think that idea still profoundly influence the collective unconscious. And it's coming out of, let's make baby pods. Let's get rid of women and have robot cat waifus and put a baby pod module on it. And that's our future now. We're gods. We're just like the Abrahamic God. Look at us, even though we don't believe in him. I think that's what's going on. And that's really what's got me going on this whole thing. I feel like we're racing to the edge of a cliff. I don't want to have robot baby pod waifus and shit walk. That sounds like a fucking nightmare. That sounds terrible. And I think that also links up with the transgendered idea. A lot of these men becoming women and saying they can become pregnant. I think it's all connected in a deep way that even these atheist people don't realize. That idea, that seed, was planted in them long ago, and it's blossomed into this terrible flower that everybody's obsessed with now. They're like, this is the way. This is how we become like our role model for 2,000 years and achieve that. You look at the old pagan religions, what was that the highest achievement? It was, I'm going to be like Odin. Wife's going to be like Freya. Hopefully our son will be like Thor or, you know, another, you know, young goddess. That idea is gone. I think that's what has caused this crisis.
Yeah, and I don't really see much of a way to stop it. Like, aside from, like, it's not going to be probably legislated away. I mean, I kind of get that. No, nothing like that. It's not like we're going to be able to make this go away in any way other than, like, bringing, I think, messages of family and wholeness, and letting people do what they're going to do. Like, it's just something that, like, individuals are going to have to sort out for themselves, and the most we can do is, like, kind of be a support in that.
I think so, and that's kind of like why we're having these talks in the first place. It's because we only can figure these things out ourselves. Because the thing is, it can't be done top down. Trying to legislate something like this would just backfire immediately, because people would be like, "Holy fuck, no!" Because you can't. Right. It's not. It won't lead to like the expression. Because I do truly believe that one has to entrust this to people to figure this out. That we, as a collective, can figure this thing out on our own. That it doesn't need to be legislated. One doesn't have to become all tyrannical and weird about it. It's like, no, actually, we just have to just support people. We have to believe in people. We have to believe in each other, that we can figure this thing out, that we can do this, and everyone can find their own way of doing this. But I just also want to bring up that with like God versus the gods and goddesses from the pagan religions. And also coming into like this whole Choreos Arctea stuff as well, from the anthropological sources and all of this. The Choreos Arctea stuff was also tied into like the gods and goddesses of, for instance, the Greek, from Greek mythology, for instance. And a lot of this, they were role models. And there were these dynamics and that were there. But I think those dynamics tap into, also what Jung would talk about, these deep archetypal patterns and these deep archetypal archetypes. And I think we used to be more aware of them, like consciously, or like interacting with them in that way. Because, they tie into instinct, they tie into our emotional self, but also, like our instinctual self and our bodies, and I think that's missing. And I think to some degree with the comic book heroes, for instance, that you were talking about, Neirum, that I do think that people are trying to find that back. I do think so in their own way. They're trying to find that again, to find this. But I think that I don't know. I don't know. I do think that people are making moves towards that, towards like finding their way back to the archetypes, to these different archetypal symbols.
I think Terence McKenna brought it up, and I know he's a controversial figure, but he talked about the archaic revival, and I think that's what we're talking about here. Is we have to go back into the past and look at examples like I'm looking at Odin and Freya, and I'm looking at Zeus and Hera, and I'm like, look, these were married couples, and they had their own children that were gods, and that seems to make a lot more sense than like one dude all rolled up into a female and a child and everything into one. That is, it has confused people. It has profoundly confused us. To now we're not in survival mode anymore. We live on easy street with all this technology and these ideas that, we on the outset reject. Deep inside, we're like, I want to be just like God. I'm going to create babies and robots, and I'm going to be whatever gender I want. And I'm going to make a CRISPR virus that I can grow wings and fly around like a dragon. And, we're the gods now. Look what we've done. That's that role model. They looked up to this being for 2,000 years. And that's the natural evolution of that idea to what our society is. And I really just want to highlight that. I know I already said that, but I feel like there's a lot to that that has to be addressed. And we have to look far back into our past with these other models of humanity, male, female, child, to save ourselves. I just don't think we're going to make it very far in these robot babies and all this craziness. We're going to turn ourselves into something less than human. We're going to turn into, I don't know what. We're going to lose that spark of divinity we have within us. In favor of what exactly? In favor of what? In favor of going where? I don't think it's a good place. Everybody thinks it's going to be like utopia, the parrot. You can be whatever you want to be. I don't know. We went over that disgusting game Scorn. And that's exactly what happened in that game. People were being grown out of walls and just falling on the ground, and they go straight to work. They don't have genitalia anymore. There are no men. There are no women. There are no families. There are no babies. You're grown
aliens.
as a full human. Sorry, what'd you say?
We become the aliens.
Basically, yes. But I think in that sense, I don't think really that that even this idea of moving towards that is even viable, because with the rejection of the feminine and the instinctual comes also this weird relationship we have with nature, that we seem to want to dominate it, that we seem to like there's this elder shaman that I'm in this like shamanism group with, and he calls it that matter thinking, like what the problem is, because everything is dead and doesn't matter, and I think that's the whole problem. It's like we somehow haven't gotten to this weird point where we see other things. To some people, I mean, that go all the way out there, even other people, it's like we start to see other living beings and things, which includes like nature and everything part of that. I mean, even all these processes, as if they are dead things that can be controlled, can be shaped into whatever we want it to be. And
we don't. Sorry.
Yeah. No, go ahead.
We don't see spirit in matter.
Yeah.
And that's the whole, like, that's Venus, that's what her glyph means, is attracting spirit into matter.
Yeah, and I think that's lost. And I think it's and I think it's key into bringing spirit, indeed back into matter, to embody our souls back into our bodies, into not just that, but also connect us back to nature, so we can actually get back on course. So we have a proper relationship between each other, between men and women, men between each other, women between each other, like everyone, like all people, that can have like and actually work towards that. Is it going to be perfect? No. Life is not perfect. It's messy. But working towards that is better than doing nothing. And at the same time, nature as well. But go ahead, GnosticNun.
And a proper relationship with children and to the child, because this, I think, is supposed to be the age of the child. How would it feel to be one of the first humans born from a pod? I don't know what kind of how you integrate that, like how does that set you up for relating to the world?
I don't think it can't, because this is explored a lot in sci-fi. I'm a big sci-fi nerd, more than swords and fantasy. So there's this TV show called Space Above and Beyond. It was on during the 90s on Fox. And there were pod babies. They were fighting this war with aliens, and the military grew millions of people in pods to come out fully grown at 18 years old with genetic memories. And, they helped humanity win this big war against these weird aliens. But everybody called him like a tanker and said, you have no soul, you have no mother, you have no father, you're a state tool, you're a government tool. And a lot of them had a very hard time with that, because after all, they're still human. They still have the same emotions and feelings. They're not robots. They're people with no family. And it was very, very difficult for the tankers, for these people that were bred for war, to integrate it all, and they would do everything. They would go above and beyond to save everybody, because they were stronger, they had faster reaction time. They were genetically modified, but everybody hated them, and it took like years for this one dude, for his own squad to sort of accept him and give him love that he had never received. And there's this scene where, you know, people acknowledge him and like him and pat him on the back, and he goes into his bunk and he just starts crying. He just never felt that motherly love, that fatherly love, that acceptance. It's a heartbreaking scene, a very powerful scene that I think real humans are going to be experiencing here very soon, unfortunately.
A lot of humans do experience that, unfortunately.
Yeah,
They do.
they do.
Yeah, they're born into something, and they're, you know, not don't have a family, or their family died or abandoned them, or that's very true. But at least they have that birth through a human. You know,
Right.
at least people think they still have a soul, and you have a chance. Like, you can turn your life around. There's a lot of what do you call it? Underdog stories that, you know, people look up to, and it inspires them. Will we have those with tank people, with pod babies? I don't know. Maybe we'll adjust. Maybe I don't know what I'm talking about, but I feel like it will be very difficult for them, especially if you now that this transgendered idea is around. What if they start birthing children without a gender? They're like a Barbie doll down there. You know, they don't have anything. They're just a being. Since you don't need a woman or a man to reproduce, you can grow them out of a pod. What's the purpose of gender at that point? That might be a whole other ball of wax. You might be entering into some territory like in Star Trek with the eugenics war. You know, like Khan, Noonien, and Soon, like they were more intellectual, they were superior. What did they do? They tried to take over the whole planet because they thought they were better than us. That's a possibility. I don't know. I'm just spitballing here, but yeah, very interesting direction with what you said there, GnosticNun. Yeah, I don't know what it's going to be like for them, but
Yeah.
I feel
Me either, but I do think that from what and it's been quite a while when I looked into it, but regarding that, I think from what is known is that the connection to the mother, but also, you know, because when the baby is in the womb, there's this connection between you know, mother and child that's already starting to be established right then and there. And I think that connection, and, you know, I think the baby knows like when it gets to a certain point developed, when it's like quite late. I think the baby knows that the mother is there, the heartbeat, and all of these things, and it plays a very important role later when the baby would be born. You know, if the baby is born, in the bonding process as well, because then there's this awareness of like, yeah, this is my mom, kind of thing. And I think this bonding that happens already from such an early age, when does not happen. It does not happen. We can't. I don't think we can simulate that, because
Right,
there's
it's
some.
like-
Yeah, go ahead.
Those earliest memories of just that authentic kind of warmth and
Yeah.
the gentle pulse of the heartbeat. Like, how does that just your basic wiring? Because that plays a role with your physiology later. Like, just the sound of heartbeat we're attuned to. If instead you were attuned to like beeps and whizzes from electronic equipment and your amniotic pod refilling or whatever.
Yeah,
I mean,
you can't simulate that love. I
No,
think what you're describing there is love, like that
Yes.
warmth, the heartbeat.
Yeah, that's,
Even speaking to a baby, you know, while
Yeah.
it's being, you know, while you're pregnant, that's love. You're giving that child love, and it knows it's loved even before it's born. I don't think you can simulate that. I don't know
think-
what these people will be like when they're coming out of a pod. Like, what's the first thing they're going to say? And is that another thing? Are we going to like download knowledge into them where they don't even have to go to school? They're just out as a complete being with no childhood. I don't know. This can go in so many dark directions.
But I think the essence of love that is there not there, and I think from what I remember, if I recall this correctly, and I'm not sure, so don't quote me on this one. But from what I've seen is that they thought that potentially it's just that like the pod baby thing is gonna fail because of the lack of love and this bonding, because the child is just gonna die because of lack of love.
Maybe. If they create it differently and modify its genome, it might not die. It might come out as a monster. It's something that does not require love. Something that requires something else. I don't know what, but I think you're right about that. If you're talking about a regular human being like us in this room right now, yeah, that baby would die. But I'm not so sure that's what they're working on.
And that's the whole thing. And I think that when it comes to all of this, I mean, when it comes to like all of this, like these dynamics and everything that is going on, really, like, with this fight between heaven and earth, all this strife that is happening. I think very much it's through this coming together of instinct and intellect, and through and actually accepting the fact that like we're not just rational beings, we have emotions too. And I think if we integrate these different parts of ourselves, that then then an actual expression of true love is possible. And I think love is the key in all of this. Similarly with that with that whole with the pod babies and all that. It's like you can't simulate that. You just can't. Similarly,
have you guys ever seen that movie Splice? It's a really disturbing movie, but it's relevant. Yeah, that is have you seen it, GnosticNun?
No.
It is a really fucked up movie. I would never watch it again. I'll never watch it again. But I think these pod babies will be something like that. I do. Like, so I'll just lay it out. There's this, they're messing with like a CRISPR virus or something and creating this new form of life in a laboratory. And they splice it with human DNA. And it comes out as a woman. And it's trying to bang the male scientist. It's God that created it. And he's just like not having it. And the woman monster that they create, it has a tail, it has weird looking eyes, it has a really long tongue and like these sharp teeth. But it's like a human female form, and the man denies it. And so the female becomes aggravated and turns into a male that chases after the female scientist, and it raped her, and it created another being inside of her that then she sold to like some pharmaceutical company for millions of dollars to like birth the baby. But they had to kill that thing because it went around trying to rape and eat everybody because it was based in this nasty instinct, spliced with human DNA, and it didn't speak English. It didn't have words. It was just a monster that did not require love like humans, and it did not have the same faculties or emotions that we do. It was a totally alien being for the sake of progression and science. And for that reason, like that scene and that, I'll never watch it again. It was a really fucked up scene. I did not.
Yeah.
I couldn't even watch it all the way. But I think that's what we're talking about here is these pod babies. That's what's going to come out, guys. It's not going to be a nice, cuddly little human.
The pod babies might be fine. They might just be just fine. Given to parents who love them very much and take good care of them, they might be fine and just like us. But this whole idea of pod babies, I mean, this, like all the references you mentioned, this idea has been coming for a long time. It's a big part of Brave New World, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, for sure.
And that used to be recognized as like, oh, that's creepy and that is dystopian.
Mm-hmm.
And now I'm not so sure. that everybody even sees it that way.
I think it's because they lost hope in the family dynamic, in marriage itself. People are like not getting married. People are trying not to have kids. People aren't even having sex anymore. They don't even want a relationship. You know, I see the women get on the internet and you know do the bouncing around, and they're not having real relationships. And I see the men isolating, working on AI code. And they, you know, like Lex Friedman and all these other people are like, yeah, I'm going to build a wife out of robotic parts. That's my future. That's what everybody's focused on. They are focused on this brave new world because they lost hope in the old world.
But on the other hand, a lot of the IVF technology, and I think what this is geared toward, are really like married couples who desperately want to have children and can't. And so, you know, as a consequence, when they do have children, they, from what I've seen, make very good parents, very happy, well-adjusted children. So, you know, I think the danger is not so much in like giving people, families who really do love and want children, giving that to them, as like what you said, like the state kind of taking over that kind of, like in the hands of a powerful state. That being misused.
Well, that brings up a whole other interesting line of conversation that might make everybody mad. But why do we have such an infertility problem? And is technology the way to solve that?
That's a good question. I mean, I don't know how fertility rates have really changed over the years. I haven't looked at that data, but I know that like environmental pollution.
Oh yeah, that definitely
Yeah. So like if we could like clean up our act a little bit, you know, maybe we don't need the pod babies. And that's always what's interesting to me. The most intellectual people on the earth never think about simple solutions. They're like, let's think of the most complicated, convoluted, ridiculous solution, and that'll fix everything. And then you get into it, and it screws up 12 other things. Like, for example, the DNR, the Department of Natural Resources. You know, they go around and they, you know, killed all the wolves and cut down all these certain trees, and it has destroyed the ecosystem to such an extent that in Yellowstone, the DNR years ago had to release wolves to try and save the forest. The forest was like dying. Like there was invasive species of like these weevils, and the deer were getting sick. The rabbits were overrunning everything and eating everything everywhere. So they reintroduced these wolves into Yellowstone, and then they started killing the sick deer, the deer that were, you know, not able to have healthy babies. And you know, they culled off the weak, and then the strong started to flourish. The deer antlers started to get bigger and wider. The rabbit population reduced, and these bushes and different plants started coming everywhere. And then that redistributed the water flow, and new creeks and streams sprouted seemingly out of nowhere just by introducing wolves. A predatory force in the forest actually made it healthy and flourish. Now we're entering this problem where the wolves have done so well, they're moving down in through Colorado, and the farmers are pissed, so they're going out in their trucks in the night, and they're like blowing these wolves away with 50 caliber rifles, and the DNR is having to go after them and be like, look, you guys can't do this. But then the farmers are like, they're eating our livestock. And I'm like, okay, that's a legitimate issue, but also the forest is important. So what do we do? I was, you know, talking to Bass about this. I was like, why don't we invest in fencing technology, like fences, like make a fence that emits a sound that repels animals, and maybe it can even emit a smell that deters them. You know, something like that would be a much better solution than murdering all of the wolves or doing some crazy scientific DNR experiment to try and quote unquote make everything better. I think that's a fruitless endeavor to try and make nature better. And we're applying that same thought to humanity, as in these pod babies. We're going to make it better because there's so many infertile people. Okay, guys, what if there's a much, much simpler solution to this, and we do not need to go into Aldous Huxley land? Like, maybe we should think about that, but I don't hear anybody talking about that at all. It's like crickets out there in that route.
I think from when I looked into the whole infertility thing, it seems to be the most thing seems to be coming from pollution, and it seems to be coming from the way that we actually as human beings are treating. It's like BPA. It's like different pollutants that can have an effect. There's other factors, of course, too. It's very complicated, these kind of things, but I do think that if we would take care of these pollutants, if we take better care of nature, then there's going to be a better relationship between nature and us, and it will have a positive effect on us as well, including our fertility maybe not everyone, but for more people, that it would make things better. And I think, and also, like stress and a lot of other factors play into this as well. And I think that if we work on those things instead of, if we work on those things, I think that a lot of things can already improve. I mean, like, is it going to solve everything? No. And I think like, might like different methods for helping like couples get kids be good? Probably, yes. Why not? But at the same time, we have to address the core issues. Because, we can't keep inventing new things to deal with the symptoms while we're not addressing the core issue. And it seems to be that the core issue seems to be like we're polluting nature, which is a bad thing. And it's affecting us, which is a bad thing. So maybe we should not do that. Maybe we need to, like release the wolves, not pollute nature, take better care of it, and maybe things will fall or like become better for us as well, because we're interconnected.
I think it's sourced again in the idea of where humans are outside of nature, from the concept of this role model of God not needing a wife. He's outside of nature. Also, God cannot die, and he knows everything. You look at the older pagan gods, they were not outside of nature. They could die. They had children. They didn't know everything. They were more in line with nature, and I think, people followed that role model. Again, I think this is a natural progression with the idea of an Abrahamic omnipotent God transgenderized, where we don't need to live in harmony with nature. We can make whatever we want. We can manifest whatever we want. Sorry,
Right.
I've heard somebody else talking. Go ahead, sorry.
Well, I think, it's not like we're going to be able to turn back the clock on our knowledge and our, we're not going to get there just completely by looking to the past and saying like, we need to be like those gods, not like these gods. Like fact is we're here and we have to synthesize something new for ourselves, a new understanding. And, I work in medical research. I have no problem. With, making advancements in knowledge and technology.
Oh, yeah.
But, we could invent 5 new heart disease medications with a whole slew of other side effects, when the majority of human disease, like you said, it has very simple causes and is easily preventable.
Yeah. And I think that's where it's like, because the thing is that similarly with the old gods and the old, like, a lot of rituals, a lot of things got lost. And the thing is that at the point where we are, even if we would have all of these things, we would have to adapt and synthesize to because the thing is that even the old gods, like they, for instance, take Mars. If you would take Mars all the way back to more like the Proto-Indo-European times, it would be more of like a hunter deity than a war deity. And the thing is, like, gods evolve. That's just what happens. So another thing is that, we can look back at the past, but, we have to adapt this to the now. We can't just pretend to live in the past, because we don't. So that's true. But I do think, I don't know, I feel like there's this need for to look back at the past and then synthesize this with the future, so we can create a better future for ourselves. That's a bit more balanced and integrated, where we yeah, solve these things on a
Yeah.
deeper level.
Well, we'll definitely have to cherry pick. I agree with you, GnosticNun. It's not like we can just abandon everything that we've learned. We have to, like you said, synthesize something new here that actually works. And all I can speak on is how I myself have been doing that. I'm trying to feel it out. Like if it feels right and it lines up with what my logic in my mind is, saying to me, I'm like, okay, maybe this is a viable direction. Like your heart kind of like a compass to guide you in the right direction. And then you get to a point where you use your mind to be like, okay, logic. Oh yes, the man, the woman, the child. Yes, this makes sense to me. Perhaps there is something here that I can pull out or cherry pick and put into the new mosaic that I myself am constructing to try and figure out, what do I do here? How do I relate to women? How do I relate to my child? What does it mean to be a father? And I got to feel it out. I think that's all we've got, really, is that feeling of, does this feel right? Does this cause me more anxiety, or does this cause me peace? Does this heal me inside in a way? And I see with the transgender community, I don't see healing. I don't see peace. I see constant torment. I see pain and suffering. I'm not going to try to stop them from what they're doing. People have to figure it out on their own, but I don't see that happiness, that peace. I see suffering.
Well, I mean, I would want to add with that, it's just, I would add that generally speaking in society, I mean, just looking around, there's a lot of suffering going on.
Yeah. I guess I just see more like, I know, of course, everybody has some intense pain and suffering, but it seems...
even feel like your body is in any way like...
yours.
Yeah.
Yeah. That is below the bottom chakra. That is, I don't know what that is, because, I see other people, maybe they're an alcoholic or they have a drug addiction. Yeah, they're in pain and they're suffering, but they are certain about many other things, and I can see them crawl out of that alcoholic thing or that drug addiction and become better. I don't know. This might be a whole other topic. Maybe you don't want to talk about on here, but I just don't feel that with the transgender community. I feel like because the things that you do to yourself, the things that you cut off and remove, that is never coming back. And what if you change your mind? A lot of them do. When they get into their 30s, they change their mind. And a lot of them do kill themselves, out of, I guess, despair and nihilism, like, oh my God, what have I done? And that's not talked about. That is tragic. That's horrible.
Well, a lot of teens who consider themselves trans and feel like they're not being accepted or they're in torment because of that also kill themselves.
Yeah. Yes, it's very true.
No, that's true. I think... Yeah, I don't know. I think generally, when it comes to a lot of these things, I think it's a lot of this, for me at least, points very simply to a real need for people, for themselves, to reevaluate society, to reevaluate and look at like, wait, like, it doesn't seem that any of this shit is working. What we're doing right now, like, not really. It's like there's something off, and I kind of feel like it's up to people to be like, to question that and be like, and just think about it and be like, wait, does this work for me? Like, it doesn't really seem like it does. Like, in whatever way that plays out for people, and I feel like it's about figuring that out for ourselves and to I don't know, like take back more of like I don't know, I guess like empower each other in that way. That's the only way what I can like how I could say it, like empower each other to
Yes.
break free from these imposed limitations.
Victim mentality.
Yeah, and also you know, like the complexes and all these things that stem from like trauma and all these things, like to not just like, you know, work towards the empowerment of yourself, but, you know, empower each other in that way, so that we can start to help each other. And I think through that we can come much further than on our own. And I think it very much then, you know, gets into the point of like requiring I don't know, people to start to work towards building communities, much like, you know, like we have here the Fox Den, and there's, you know, like other communities out there as well, like these kind of communities where we start to like question these things, and we're just like, this doesn't really seem like to be working for me, and like, what the fuck is going on here? And like, why am I stuck in these loops? Why am I like, you know, like to start to look at one's behavior and the behaviors of others, and to be like, and try to follow one's own path in that way, and to very much do that instead of trying to just look up. It's like, because I see that also too often, like, you know, with, for instance, like young men, for instance, that they project like the wise old man archetype onto particular men, these cult gurus, or like these other men that even if they mean well, which I think is a real problem too. And I think the only way forward is for people to figure this out on their own, to find their own path, to figure out like who they are. And I think by doing that, and by people like, you know, figuring that out for themselves, finding their own way how to like reintegrate instinct and like emotions, and like to accept those parts of themselves, and being like, no, fuck this shit, like I don't have to just be rational, like I have emotions, I have like my instinctual side, I have you know, like, and we have these different parts that make us human for a reason, that you know, if we work on that in our own way, however that looks like, I think we can already start to get, you know, to a much better place. And I think if we start to help each other, and like, you know, and to be like, you know, we're all humans, like men, women, like everyone, we're just humans, and we're here trying to figure this thing out. And I think if we start to approach it from that lens, and like from the lens of like, we should be like empowering each other, like no matter who we are. I think there's like a real potential to shift this around, because I do feel that like this whole this whole mentality of like this war in you know, between heaven and earth kind of mentality, it goes also into like all this like kind of like division kind of thinking, this thinking of like us versus them, and all this kind of thinking, where, and I do understand like where it's coming from, and you know, there's like different things playing into it on a deeper level for people, but at the same time, I do think like, you know, if we want to turn this thing around and actually we need to start.
You just gave me an epiphany, like you just gave me a huge epiphany about empowerment and victim mentality. Let me lay this out.
Okay.
Like with the wolves, let's kill all the wolves. That's a victim mentality. We're victims of the wolves, they're eating all of us, instead of an empowering thought like, how do we keep these wolves out of here but alive, because they have a role to play, but keep our livestock safe? That thought never entered anybody's mind. The victim mentality of, let's pave the whole planet and the forest, let's flatten out these dangerous species. That is the same mentality in the LGBTQ community. It's, we're being attacked by all these vicious misogynistic people, we have to pave the whole planet, instead of the mentality of empowerment of, maybe I should put some shoes on so I don't step on something sharp. That's not the mentality. It's the total inversion of empowerment. It is destruction in favor of protection, because you're the victim. You're the one that is not.
In fairness, they have been brutally victimized, but you're right. It's not good to latch on to a victim mentality and dwell there forever.
Right.
I do want to I wanted to thank you for pointing that out, GnosticNun, because it's important to point out. But I do think like, you know, with regarding to both these different, like all these different sides, I think there's a lot of that comes from things like trauma and from like overall like influences that are there in the culture, and I feel that on in like the generally in the culture war, and like in whatever like dynamic that is playing out, I think there's this like kind of like mentality of like the other side is the wolves. We need to pave. We need to completely get rid of that. Like no matter like who.
People weren't getting eaten alive by wolves. Just like, it's very true that, the gay and transgender community, they were being persecuted against. Those things are very true. But then the following reactions go nuclear. It's like, oh, we have to destroy, total war. And that's what leads to this imbalance, this serious imbalance, like with the forests and with our society itself. I just want to get that out there. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Go ahead.
Yeah, but I don't know. I kind of feel that that instead of because the thing is, I kind of feel with the different sides, there's a lot of factors playing there. Trauma can be one of them, and like people being brutalized in different ways, and then we fall into all of these different camps and we huddle together, and then we. But I do feel like it becomes very much like this what you were saying about like that regarding the like how the regarding the example of the farmers and the wolves. And I think that if instead we would be focusing on like this group kind of thing, instead of we would be starting to empower each other, even if it's just the people within our own community. I mean, it doesn't have to be. Then we like. And I kind of get to the point where it's like empower each other in the sense of like that we set the boundaries. We actually start to be like no and work on I don't know, embodying that more. And I think that would be generally helpful and make things more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think, to say they are waging war on everything and they are, paving over everything, I think that's still very othering to them. And it's like, they're waging war on me. Maybe that's not quite like that. Now you're the victim and you're they're victimizing you.
Right. Yeah. And then we want to flatten that side, and then that side, it turns into a nasty situation. Yeah. You're right. That is the framework that I'm coming from. Yeah, totally.
I don't know. I kind of feel
because I do feel that pressure. I do feel that shame. There are these terms like breeder floating around in those communities. Oh, you're a breeder, and I hear them say the nastiest things about mothers. Oh, you shouldn't be a mother. You shouldn't do this. You should. There's a war on mothers too. There's a lot of ugliness and nastiness and desire to pave over everybody instead of each individual, putting on a pair of shoes and not stepping on the sharp things and not getting mad at the rocks and wanting to destroy and smash all the rocks and turn it into a nice flat surface so you can be barefoot. But yeah, you're right about that.
I don't know. I just go ahead.
I'm just gonna say there's ugliness. There's a lot of ugliness on both kind of sides of that war. That is not really helpful to anyone.
Right.
No,
it's not.
That's exactly the thing, and I think that I generally think and feel that if I don't know that it's not helpful, even though like I get where it's coming from, and I understand, like I can understand where it's coming from. Because of there's all this stuff going on, and then there's and what is going on in the entire situation is kind of like reinforcing itself. But I do think like this whole paving away mindset is not very not helpful.
And that was illustrated very well. You brought up Aldous Huxley's Brave New World. There were the savages, the people that had children naturally, and then you had the people that had them grown in the pods. And there was a struggle and a conflict within that as well. And I think that's what's going on right now. That was a very how do you say it, prophetic work there on Huxley's part. But yeah,
But
you're right about that. There's a desire to flatten on both sides, and in the end, there'll be nobody. If we continue down this path, I believe it can turn into a very ugly, I don't know, crazy sort of conflict. I don't even. I mean, we broached it a little bit. Like, what if these pod babies come out without a gender? What are they going to do? What are they going to think? What are they going to say now that they don't need a mother and a father? What if they don't need love? I don't know.
I don't know. It's just, I don't know. I think generally, like, getting back to this whole, like, I guess, conflict regarding and that's going on. I don't know. Like, I would want to, like, then bring it back into the sense of, like, empowerment. And I think generally, if one would work on that, I think a lot of the like more crazy stuff that's happening and the lashing out, I think, like, that a part of it, maybe not all of it, but a part of it regarding like, specific individuals, and it's not going to apply to everyone, but I do think that trauma and a lot of these things play into it. This sense of, like, insecurity, or like this sense of these different dynamics that are there, because like, and I think that very much plays into it. And I think that, I know that in that sense, that empowering individuals in that sense and helping them with that to feel more confident and to work through these trauma patterns will make things much easier on them, and there would be less of this triggering going on and this lashing out. And I think, like, that's one factor of it, but then there's also, like, many more other factors that are involved as well. But I think that's one big factor in that, like, and like I said earlier, the trauma very much also can lead to a fragmentation of the self, and then at the same time, that can lead to a disconnect from instinct and emotions, and like think like an emotional suppression complex, for instance. And
a victim complex. Like, I'm gonna assume this, like, victim status because it's like an identity. And I mean, I've kind of seen that. I mean, I think places should start having, like, gender neutral bathrooms so that, like, those people can go and have their own locker rooms, so they're not making biological women feel uncomfortable by insisting that they have a place there. Like, in some cases I wouldn't mind, but I have seen, like, instances of people that just really don't have any regard for, like, making others around them, like, genuinely uncomfortable. And that's, I don't think that's okay, but I do want them to be respected and, like, have a place to go.
Yeah, there needs to be a place. You're right. I think you're hitting the nail right on the head. We don't need to have them go in the male or female bathrooms. There needs to be a third bathroom, or a third realm of Olympic sports. They shouldn't be competing with women, shouldn't be competing with men. They shouldn't be getting into boxing rings like that either. That there needs to be a third element, a third sport, because no matter how hard people want to try or talk about it or reframe it, it is a different dynamic. It is different. And it's not the same. And I think on both sides, it deeply disturbs both sides to witness these things. And there needs to be a little difference for that. If we're going to live together. Otherwise, we're going to keep trying to flatten each other. It's going to be a forever war.
And I think in that sense, that's where both empowerment, but also in that sense, understanding and more like of a sense of empathy starts to come in. And I think I think that's me speaking from experience, because I've been on the more right-wing side of like this whole culture war for a very long time, till I completely dropped out of the entire thing completely. And kind of the way how that happened for me was I started to work on my own unresolved trauma, and I started to notice due to that that on both sides the people were traumatized, and I started to be like, so wait, we're just a bunch of traumatized people lashing out to each other. Like, well, not everyone, but like plenty enough of people. And once I started to understand that, I was just like, yeah, I kind of am done with this fighting, like, and all this nonsense. And I was like, maybe we need to start to see that that there's a whole bunch of traumatized people here, and we need to like start to approach this with a more of a sense of compassion to like these different people, and to not do this weird shit that, like, that was occurring. That's kind of like what at least snapped me out of the whole this whole like gender culture war thing that's been going on. And I think that's a big part of like what's key in that, because it allows for like a reframe of the entire thing, what is going on, where instead of like it becomes this very personal thing, you suddenly realize like, wait, like, and it snaps you out of that, because it snapped me out of like this framework.
Yeah, everybody's got an axe to grind, man, and it's time to bury the hatchet. We can't go back 1,000 years, like GnosticNun was saying. Like, these things have happened. These people are doing these things. How do we live together? That's not what's being talked about. Well, it's all force. It's all like force legislation, force this, just the whole paving mentality. And then the other side, of course, is doing that right back, the whole abortion thing, that used to be a thing that we just kind of left alone, but now that's a point of contention too. So this is like not going away, guys. This is getting worse. It's heating up. So how do we cool off? What do we do here? How do we move forward without flattening each other?
Oh boy, I feel like that could be a third part of this discussion.
Probably. I mean, I'm up for it.
I have to go to work. I'm gonna do a little breathing first, and then I gotta get on with it. But
I appreciate your input. It was great having a female perspective. Yeah. Thank you.
Yes, thank you for being on GnosticNun. It was a real pleasure.
Really nice to talk to both of you. Yes. Have a good one.
Okay.
Have a good day.
Yes.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. But I think, Neirum, that that's very much key to be able to reframe, because I think it's, speaking from experience, it's like starting to see that it starts to immediately humanize people again. I think that's the whole thing. We're I don't know, like, one can get so like tied up into like this whole war between like heaven and earth that we stop seeing that like heaven and earth like need each other, and that and that kind of like, and what's kind of underlying this the underlying causes beyond just what is going on, and that there's like that there's like things such as trauma involved, and there's things involved in the culture that and like how people relate to each other that keep this kind of like trauma loop and these like behavioral loops there. And we can only get out of that if we start to address that in ourselves, and also start to see that in others, and that we become aware of that, and we actually can approach the whole situation with a sense of understanding and compassion. Even though, like, we certain people that do shitty behaviors, we can't just accept that, and, we need boundaries, and that's where I think empowerment comes in. But, empowerment also means that we help each other to heal from these things. We help each other to work through this, to empower each other to go through these limitations. We can't always do that on our own, and we we need others for
we
that.
need a family, and then we need to realize we have a human family too that we can draw upon.
Yeah. And I think I think that those points are very much big points for me, at least, to like start to resolve this. So we start to humanize each other again. So we start to see men and women as people. So we can start to see like these women or these men, maybe there's trauma involved, and maybe
Yes.
Does it excuse their behavior if they're doing very shitty stuff? No. But knowing that why this shit is occurring, why is this happening, starts to take away a lot of this, like, that it is very personal, that it's very much like, oh, this is about me, or that kind of thing. And it takes a lot of ego out of it. It takes a lot of this, I think, unnecessary fighting out of it. And if we become, if we work on ourselves, if we become self-aware of our own trauma that we're dealing with, and then we start to become aware of other people's trauma, what they're dealing with, and have this understanding that we can start to work on cooperation and unity and empathy, and start to become like a human family again, and to extend this to nature, because how we relate to each other also extends to how we relate to nature as well, because nature and other people, it's kind of, because both are seen as other, and
Yes.
And if we can fix that, we can fix how we relate to nature. We can, and it's all interconnected in that way.
I think, I think the Abrahamic religions really shot themselves in the foot 2,000 years ago, and it was inevitable that these ideas of transgenderism, of godlike power to create babies in pods, it's inevitable. Those ideas are baked into that concept of an omnipotent God that does not need a family. It is instead, God is more like a scientist in a laboratory that created the heavens and the earth, that watches down with a microscope and tries to tweak things. Ooh, I messed up. The Canaanites, like, I'm going to flood the whole earth and separate some of the wheat from the chaff and start over again with a covenant. Like, that's very much like a scientist, like, ooh, here's a second experiment. Let's see how well this goes. This time I think I'm going to be a little more hands off. And what do you see people do? They're embodying that. That is their role model, even though they don't believe in God. They want to be God. So how do you get around that? It's been baked into our minds for 2,000 years, this concept of there is a way to be outside of nature. Humans are always going to aspire to be the things that they're exposed to. At most everybody's been exposed to this Abrahamic God concept. Most people have not been exposed to a mother-father-child dynamic. Most people are not connected to nature. They believe they're here to dominate the earth, that they are here to modify the earth to their needs, instead of working with it. And in that same manner, we're talking about the earth. We're here to dominate the earth. Earth is the mother. The sky is the father. So most people's mentality is they're living up in space, manipulating the earth down below to their whim. And that is the rejection and subjugation of the feminine spirit, of the mother spirit specifically, like the pregnant woman spirit. I think we talked a little bit about the Steven Crowder incident, where Steven Crowder, was telling his wife she had to go get an Uber to go get groceries, and she's like, 8 months pregnant or whatever. She's got this, big belly. It's hard for her to walk around. And he's sitting there in a chair smoking a cigar with his socks on, saying, no, you cannot use the car. You cannot use my car. What if I want to go see my friends? What if I want to go play, a game or something, or I want to get out of the house? And she's like, but I'm just trying to buy groceries for us, Stephen. I love you, and then she takes the keys. She's like, I'm taking the car. And he gets up in her face, and she's like, he says, watch it. You better watch it. Saying this to his pregnant wife. That is very much the spirit of what he learned in the Bible. That is the way that it's portrayed. You know, this super powerful masculine guy that his goal is to subjugate the earth and women to his whims. A total imbalance, which led in their divorce. You know, now they're getting divorced, of course, because how can a woman, a pregnant woman, feel safe and loved by a man that does that? You know, why didn't he want to get in the car and go grocery shopping with her? You know, why? I don't know. Is that such a horrible concept? I don't know why it would be.
I don't know.
I mean, isn't he worried somebody might hurt his pregnant wife or something? No, he has no concern at all. He does not care.
I don't know. The only thing what I can say, because you were like talking about that these have been around for like 2,000 years. Well, I would say in that sense I have like a Proto-Indo-European ace up my sleeve regarding the deep archetypal patterns that are there. Because these Proto-Indo-European deep archetypal patterns, they go way back. They go like, if you trace them further back than that, it goes like Neolithic and even like into the Ice Age. And the thing is that these patterns have been there way longer than Christianity has been around in the West. And these patterns, there's this video from this one dude who is very much into the hunter-gatherer lifestyle. And he basically goes into that, like how basically for most of our lives, we, like if we think about that like as the human species, we have been basically hunter-gatherers, and we've been, for Western society, we've been living under this Corios framework, or like this Proto-Indo-European framework, actually. I just had Corios on my mind. But, so yes, that's the framework that we've been under for a very, very long time, which has shaped like how we are. And it's very much linked to our biology as well. The thing is that that is so embedded in the collective unconscious. If we would re-tap into that, and we would do that on a personal level, we would tap back into the Proto-Indo-European framework. And that's what I've been working on with the course that I have, to like bring that back and to recreate that framework. If we tap back into that, we can basically take away all the cultural influences from, like a lot of them from Christianity. We can like learn from certain things from the last years. We don't have to throw out the baby with the bathwater, but we can reset ourselves to this Proto-Indo-European base of these deep archetypal patterns, and to get back to like how Jung to Live By would be talking about the meta instinct, the deeper, the deeper layers.
Right. The roots of it.
The roots of it.
Yeah.
Because the thing is that like a lot of things that happen during the like the Aeon of Pisces, King Arthur, for instance, the knights, a lot of these things like go back to Celtic sources, and further back than that towards the Proto-Indo-European, because they all stem back from that. And if we tap into this, then we because of the like how old it is, it taps into something more profound and something more deep. So we can we can basically utilize that for ourselves to use this as a force of transformation. And what Lynn also had earlier posted in the round table. I feel like that's one where she paraphrases Jung to Live By, where she says true femininity is regenerative and complementary to masculinity, and this sense of regeneration but also transformation very much links to that, to it's the anima, for instance, in man. It's like it's this ability to transform oneself, to regenerate, and it's this transformative energy that is within ourselves. That's within the unconscious, in the instinctual side of us as well. And if we tap back into that, we can break through all of these societal complexes, these personal complexes, and basically reset ourselves back to it's like and I guess if we would use like a modern analogy, it would be like a factory reset.
Yeah, factory reset, man. Yeah. Like, where were we 20,000 years ago? How in line were we with biology then, and how much of that do we need to reintegrate to our modern society? And would too much of it mess up what we're trying to do? These are very good questions that are worth seeking out.
Yeah.
And what are we doing here? What's going on? What's the right thing to do? To baby pod or not baby pod? That is the question.
I think so. But also, like what GnosticNun said, regarding these, if we would reset ourselves, and we try to, through reenacting, for instance, these rituals, or like, doing this in this way to tap into these deep archetypal forces that go way beyond like Christianity and its influence. Because it's like Christianity and its influence is like the blink of a second compared to these deep archetypal patterns. And it's just
right.
Like, if we do tap into that, there needs to be more of a conscious effort on our part to reintegrate that reset into something constructive. Because it's like, we can't really be a complete hunter-gatherer. It just doesn't work. Right. We have to find like a balance between that. And I think that's where GnosticNun idea, of creating this synergy comes in. And that's, I feel, something that we're yet to figure out. I mean, it's like, I figured out for myself a lot of this stuff regarding the course and and what I've been up to and doing to like facilitate this reset in myself. And help some other people along too, but I do feel, it's very much new, and we're very much still figuring out, how to find this balance. And I mean, I'm still figuring it out myself to that degree. It's like I figured out the base, but now I'm figuring out like, well, how am I gonna reintegrate, I guess, my hunter-gatherer self here into a modern society in a way that works for me? And I think that's very individual for how we're gonna figure that one out.
Well, that's a great point. That gives me another line of thoughts. Should we be doing this with modern society? Can our biology integrate with what our intelligence strives for? Perhaps that is the motivation behind the pod babies, the transgenderism, the CRISPR virus, the AI robots. Because in the back of everybody's mind, they're like, we cannot remain these biological male-female beings that have families anymore with the goals that we have in mind. So are our goals worthwhile? What are these goals? What is the source of this goal? Where did these goals come from? Where did this mindset come from to become beyond what we were before? Why is that a desire that any of us have? What are your thoughts on that?
I don't know. I do think like, maybe in a way, like this striving towards something beyond what we are is maybe on a deeper layer, just our natural striving towards a sense of liberation that we're seeking. And I think we're seeking this in an external manner, where the true liberation and the true transformation comes from within ourselves. It's by like going through these complexes, through these different blocks that we have that are there, that hinder our true expression of ourselves. And I think a lot of it also comes in with like there's this tendency within modern society, and it's not all individuals. It's just a tendency to take things too literal, and to this disconnect from the more symbolic or metaphorical language of the unconscious. And I think there's a real need there. I think that's kind of what it is showing. It's like, why are we doing all of these things? Well, why do we want to move away? Well, we want to be liberated. Liberated from what? And I think like
our bodies.
And the thing is like, well, why? Because of the limitations that we're perceiving and that we're seeing. And the thing is that, you know, if we take that back and we take that back to like let's say the mystery schools, then it very much goes into they were going after the sense of liberation too, but they were doing spiritual liberation, where they were in their bodies, but they were, you know, working through these complexes. They were working through these spiritual blocks, so they could lead, you know, that would lead to the full expression of who they are. And I feel like it's the same desire that's underneath that's driving this need to get away from our bodies, because somehow we're associating this sense of stagnation or the sense of limitation with our bodies, where actually the very ability to transform ourselves is linked to instinct. It's linked to, you know, it's in the body. This if we tap into that, and it actually weirdly enough, it requires a shift in our perspective, in the sense of that, instead of being like, no, body bad, instinct bad, may actually be like, actually maybe it's not bad. Actually maybe that's the answer. Maybe we need to integrate it, and maybe through that we can actually be liberated, in the sense that we're still humans at the same time.
Yeah, it's a war between the heart and the mind, the body and the brain. And do you remember that mural in that Scorn game that I stopped and we regarded for a while? It was a picture of a man and a woman, and it had this surgeon reaching into the man's heart, taking it out and putting a machine in it. And then on the woman, it had a surgeon reaching into her womb, removing it to make her sterile because they had pod babies. So it's like, and the whole goal they were trying to achieve was get it to where they take enough DMT and their head splits off from their body and starts floating around, and their body falls dead. And eventually, as we saw in that game, that whole society collapsed because it was devoid of love. It was purely intellectual and rejected instinct, rejected the body in favor of the brain. And I think that's why I got so into it. Symbolically, I think it was speaking to me even now, I'm still unpacking that crazy trip of a game.
Man, I had nightmares after we went through that.
Me too, dude. It tormented me, that imagery, but I think I wanted to explore it and dive deep into it, because it is very possible that is what we're going into, man. That's the direction we're going in, is a rejection of the body in favor of machinery, in favor of mental code, in favor of the brain itself, and just cut the body off. We don't need gender. We don't need moms, dads, don't need children. We're going to go in this brave new world, and to hell with the consequences. It is the brain rebelling against the body. And if you look at the way our body's made, you know, your head has a neck. It's getting further and further away from the body in an upward direction towards the sky. So that in itself could be a representation of the Dena in the Native American belief system. Father Sky, the brain, and Mother Earth, the heart, the body that's grounded, that has feet that walk upon the earth. And why is there this war between those two things? Why is there this desire to pull your head off your body so it can float around and do what exactly? You know, trip out forever and have dreams and not interact with any other being and just be a disembodied brain, that sounds like hell. That sounds like a hell that many people don't realize that they're running full speed into.
But I think, like, symbolically, if we would be talking about that, it's like, symbolizing this sense of going further and further into the spheres of intellect, where there's this disconnect and further and further disconnect from the instinctual. But the very thing is that how more we become like disconnected from our instinctual self and also our emotional self, even though in the game, it might be this particular way how it was. But the thing is that we can't truly, as humans, unless we start like going real weird with DNA and that kind of stuff. But that aside, like, we have these things. These are part of what makes us human. And if we push it away, the instinctual side, and we push the emotional side away and be like, no, bad, it's not going to go anywhere. It's still there. And, it's just going to come up in an unconscious manner. And then you get to the point where, it becomes so like these Stoics that think like they don't have emotions or anything along these lines, but then have these like emotional outbursts and like go all weird with that. Because the thing is that we can't repress these things.
I think people try with antidepressants and other drugs. I mean, I think people are depressed for a good reason. And to ignore it and suppress it and not seek out a solution, I think is detrimental. That is the mind overpowering the body. What if because people don't exercise, they don't get enough sunlight, they're not, touched by people that love them and hugged, what if that causes depression? Have we ever thought about that? No, just take these drugs. Just, we're doing this other thing involving the brain only, to hell with your heart, to hell with your body, to hell with all of that, to hell with your genitalia. Take these drugs. We're doing this other thing and going into the brave new world.
I just had this vision, or like this meme come up from Alex Jones when he was talking about this meme where quote unquote Alex Jones was talking about this the Scorn game. Just
oh, was he? Oh, okay. Yeah.
Anyways, but that aside, I don't know. But what I wanted to say with that is that I don't think we can run away from it, even though we pretend that we can. But it still is gonna influence us in subtle, unconscious ways. And the thing is that what's gonna end up happening is that the shadow is gonna come back up, because it always does. It's like what we talked about regarding to the Kraken, regarding to the collective unconscious, and all of this stuff. What we're talking about now plays into exactly that, the Kraken. The unintegrated instinct, and it leads to an explosion of some sort. And that comes into like the catabolic process that Jung to Live By talks about, and it leads to self-destructive tendencies on a larger scale, or war, or like all kinds of other weird shit that then happens.
Well, but I think that's what the embodiment of the xenomorph is. It literally bursts out of your chest, where your heart, where your spirit resides, and there's this dark black shadow creature that is only designed to kill. It has no soft parts on it. It's all hardened shell with acidic blood, and the primary way it reproduces is through rape and death. That is definitely the direction we're going in with things. And if you look at the newer Ridley Scott movies, you discover what created these xenomorphs, what created this horrible scourge on humanity that outclasses us in every way, shape, or form, even with our advanced technology. It was a robot. It was an AI. It was this AI robot David, or this android that was so intellectual and so intelligent disconnected from body, no real heart, only a pure mind, created out of the distilled wishes of all of humanity through this Abrahamic belief system that we're going to be gods, we don't need women, created this machine that saw how sick and twisted and out of touch we had become, and it wanted to do everything in its power to stop humanity from spreading amongst the stars. So it created these aliens, these xenomorphs, that he laid all these eggs on inhabited worlds where people, are going to colonize, and they discover them, and it comes out and it eats up and destroys everything. But not only does it kill them, it humiliates them. It humiliates them in the way that it impregnates them, the way that it kills them, and the way that it gestates inside them. It is the ultimate expression of a demonic, evil, shadow-like creature that has to correct the direction of hyper-intellectualism that humanity had gone in. I think that's what the direction Ridley Scott was going with those films, and I found that very interesting, especially in lieu of this Chat GPT, the AI art. Now we don't even have to think for ourselves. We've got a machine doing it. So again, where does that leave us? If we don't need mothers, we don't need fathers, we don't need to feel depressed, we don't need to change that, and we don't even need to think for ourselves, where does that leave us? What is our purpose? What is our meaning? How do we derive meaning in a world like that? You can't. You can't derive any meaning. You become depressed. You want to go kill yourself. You don't want to have kids. You don't want to get married. What is the future in that?
I don't know, but I do think though that because we cannot run away from it. It's very much like, like with this, it's symbolically the xenomorphs, or like we can talk about it with the, with the Kraken, for instance.
Yeah.
The thing is that we cannot run away from it. It's gonna come up because it's gonna be it can come up as this destructive force if we, don't integrate it ourselves, and can come up in that way. And then you have symbolically this, like, either you could see it as like the xenomorph or the urukai or like something along this way, but it's really just a symbol of like unintegrated instinct taking over and causing, conflict. And that's kind of like part of what's going on in many ways. It can be like literal conflict, it can be more an intellectual way too. And it's very much that because it's the shadow that comes up and it influences our behavior because it's not integrated, and then influences like how we interact with the world in an unconscious manner, and then and that can lead to things such as what is going on now. And that, like, there's no real, like, I guess force or anything like behind it in a literal sense, but it's just it's just the shared unintegrated instinct that resides within society itself, that compounds and leads to all of these shadow tendencies, these negative tendencies that then will eventually lead to the very thing that we're going towards to not actually gonna work out. Because the thing is that it will end up, how more we're gonna move towards this hyper intellectualism, how stronger the shadow is gonna become, how stronger the unintegrated instinct is going to become. So how further we're going to move into the hyper rational side, how stronger the unintegrated instinctual side is going to become too. And then finally, when there's so much, like, when the tension gets too big, it's just going to smash together. Because the thing is, we can't run away from it. And the thing is,
No.
it's all up to us as individuals to, if we work on integrating our instinctual side, our emotional side, we can take away tension from it, so it doesn't have to like go bad. It doesn't have to smash into each other. So we can be like, actually, this hyper rational stuff, maybe this is not for me, and maybe I do think there's plenty of people out there that are already starting to see that and be like, I don't know about all of the direction with AI and all this stuff like that we're going into. I mean, we're already talking about it, and I've seen others similarly that are a bit like, I don't know about this. And I think the shift is gonna occur. I don't think it is possible for us to go way too overboard with these things. That there is this like homeostasis there that is gonna try to push us back towards the center in whatever way, and I'd prefer it to be an integrated way because it's gonna be less ugly. So but that's up to all of us to do that, in our own lives, to empower others to do that, to work through our trauma, to work to integrate our instinctual and emotional self, to accept those parts of ourselves, and to become humans.
Yeah, to make our own pair of shoes and quit trying to pave the whole planet for our problems. How do you adapt? How do you try and reduce the amount of destruction necessary to move forward into some interesting directions? I really enjoy watching Star Trek. I think it is a wonderful outlook on what humanity could become. There was a scene in the original Star Trek from the 60s where Abraham Lincoln called Uhura like the N-word. And he said, Abraham Lincoln said, I'm sorry, I didn't realize we're in the future. It's just the term that we use. And Uhura said something profound. She said, oh, sir, I don't take any offense. We've moved beyond the need to feel offended by what words are. And I'm like, wow, she's got some shoes on. She's not trying to pave the whole earth, And then Captain Kirk says, yes, we understand how people are trying to communicate, and we do not take offense any longer because we have a more complete understanding of people's mentality. And I'm like, that's a great example of people wearing shoes and not trying to pave over the whole galaxy with their ideology and force people to change the way they speak just because they're triggered. But I see us moving further and further and further away from that Gene Roddenberry concept of people working through their differences, through their problems, and not becoming victims about everything and wanting to finger point and demand that those people are flattened and paved over for the sake of justice. I think those are very dangerous ideas.
Yeah, I think when it comes to that, if we would, if I would bring back, like, for instance, like, with me, what I was saying regarding, like, the trauma and understanding that, I think it comes to also a lot about, like, both self-awareness and then also the ability to start to see that in others. And I think I guess it's a certain, like, psychological awareness that then they had in that scene regarding Star Trek as well. And I think that it takes away that sense of that it becomes not as personal. I mean, like, do you still feel stuff? Of course. If someone's being a massive ass, it's like you're still going to be angry about it. But at least you can understand, like, where they're, like, why they're doing it. And it makes it a bit less like being like, okay, I see where you're coming from. You're still an ass, but okay, I see where you're coming from. And I don't know. I think it takes a lot of the reactivity out of it, and I think like, of course, I mean, you can just set boundaries and be like, okay, I'm not gonna deal with this person, which is fine. Or like, depending on, like, what the situation is, it depends, but. I do think that cultivating this sense of self-awareness can then extend to others and becoming aware of like these things in others, so we can build a bit more of a understanding world where it's gonna lead more again to what you were talking about regarding regarding Star Trek and like not taking these things so personal.
Yeah.
Too.
Well, the interesting about Star Trek as well is they also broach the topic of eugenics, growing people in pods, and they had their own war. They called it the eugenics war, where humans were trying to blend together, I guess their genders and their different species, and they were just making like offshoots. They even blended with the Klingons. And made like these offshoot hybrid eugenic people. And the Federation had to just say, hey, this is banned. If anybody does this, it's like the death penalty. Like, you cannot fool with the natural genome of any species because it leads to hell. It leads to a horrible, horrible mess that nobody can sort out other than through annihilation. Like when you start splitting genomes and splicing them back together and creating whole new things that think they're superior to you, they're of course going to try and snuff you out. And then you're of course going to have to try and, kill them right back. It becomes a serious, serious issue that Star Trek, addressed. And they said, okay, these are the limits of what we can do. Mm-hmm. However, we should develop antimatter matter reactions and create warp drives and warp coils. We need to have some advanced weapons like phasers and photon torpedoes and shields and a deflector dish. Like, this technology is useful to help the spirit of humanity and its desire or even need to explore. We've explored the whole Earth. Yeah. Now we need to go out into space. What technologies should be allowed? Warp drive, okay. Genetic sequencing, not okay. However, we can try and heal your wounds super fast with like a cool little flashlight. That's acceptable because you're healing the human form back to its original state. You're not modifying the human form to, say, prevent injury. Say I want to modify my genome where my skin is like rocks. Okay, that's not the best idea that the Federation wants to be implemented. Instead, how do we quickly heal the fragile human body while we're doing this dangerous task of exploring space? And I think that's wonderful that they addressed that back in the 60s.
Yeah. And I don't know. I think in that sense it's it's all about finding a balance, and also I think it also comes in with a sense of humility and reverence for nature and like our own humanity and and to see like like how all of this is like how we are all interconnected between each other, but also with nature, and that we are part of that. And I don't know, I'm feeling like to be honest, like after we've been doing like over 2 hours of talking now, but
we're running out of gas. It's time to land the plane.
I was kind of thinking like, man, I want to go into the woods. I need some choreos time for myself.
Yes.
I think that would be a good thing. Maybe some qigong, some choreos time in the woods, and let my hunter-gatherer get out a bit. So
man. Yeah, do it. I need to do the same. But this is great, man. I'm glad we had a lady jump in and give us some insight. And we went forward a lot further than we did before with this. This was definitely nailing some stuff down. So yeah, man, I really appreciate it.
Oh yeah, it's gonna still add the Ying to Live by episodes in as well, so people can check that out in the description. So
yes,
it's good stuff to figure out. They're pretty insightful. So
oh yeah, they're wonderful. That couple and James, they're really masters at this exploring these concepts here. I think people are going to be seeking them out in the future here, because I don't know of anybody. I scour the internet for people working on this, and they are at the forefront of this. They're at the tip of the spear with this type of stuff. And they're also a married couple that are very much interested in these dynamics, and they're able to explore them together. And I don't know of anything like that. Usually I hear a dude droning on about something, but to hear a couple, well versed in Jungian psychology, is really a treasure. It's really a diamond in the rough there that people should check out for sure.
Oh yeah, for sure. But maybe on this good note, I wanna end the live stream. It's been like always a real pleasure having you on again, Neirum.
Yeah, man. Pleasure's mine, man. Anytime. This is awesome.
Yeah. Okay. On that good note, I would say see you all around, people who are listening. Thank you for being here listening. Maybe see you in the den. And do know that if anyone is interested in joining these talks, you can. You just have to hop into the Fox den and hop into the round table, and on you go. Okay, so I would say see you all next time. Okay, bye-bye.
Take it easy, but take it.